Hello, Misfits. I'm Kate.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is Betty. Welcome to Horrorwood. Kevin.
Yes.
Do you want to know something really kind of exciting?
Yes.
If Apple is correct, Apple Podcast.
Okay.
This is Horrorwood's 100th episode.
Are you serious?
Yes.
100 deep?
That's wild.
That's
and that's not even
insane.
including like the Patreon episodes. So we've
That's
done more than
just-
100.
Oh my God.
100 episodes.
Oh my God, Kate.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
So yay.
We're celebrating 100 episodes.
Woo woo.
Bum, bum, bum.
Before we get into this episode, which is a fun, light
Yay.
episode, have you watched Ripley on Netflix?
No.
Kevin.
I feel like you told me to last time I saw you.
And I see you did not follow
and
my
I didn't.
instructions.
I'm so sorry.
It's so
you like
good.
put your hand over the microphone and you're like, you stupid bitch.
Get the fuck out.
Get your shit together.
It is so, so good. It is so beautifully shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well acted. It's Andrew Scott, who can't go
Okay.
wrong. It's just so well done. And we just finished it. It's so good.
Yay.
The acting
That's
is
amazing.
so good. Yeah. And I just saw the trailer for the new Beetlejuice movie, and I'm obsessed.
I haven't seen the trailer yet.
You have to watch it. I cannot wait.
I just saw a trailer for Alien Romulus.
Never heard of it.
It's a new movie in the Alien franchise.
Oh, okay.
And it's directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed the 2013 new iteration of Evil Dead and also a movie called Don't Breathe.
Okay.
He's an amazing horror director.
Cool.
And it looks insane. I'm
All right.
so excited.
I'm excited for Halloween. We're not there yet. I realize it's June,
Mm-hmm.
but I have kind of a Halloween-y episode here. It's a little spooky-ooky because after Ron Goldman, I needed
needed a
something
break.
light and fun.
Right. That was an intense story.
It was. And having just been in New York, I'm in a New York state of mind, baby.
New York state of mind.
So I've got a haunted Broadway theater for you.
Broadway.
In fact, it's said to be the most haunted of all the Broadway theaters.
Holy shit. Which one?
The Belasco.
Ooh.
Named after David Belasco. A great source I used for this episode is the book The Untold Stories of Broadway, Volume 3, by Jennifer Ashley Tepper. Tepper is a producer and director of programming for Fine Signs and 54 Below. She's curated or produced over 2,500 shows. For her Untold Stories of Broadway series, she interviewed more than 250 theater
Oh
professionals.
my God.
So the accounts in her book come directly from these interviews.
Okay.
And she was named as one of the 10 professionals in Backstage Magazine's first annual Broadway Future Power List.
Hey.
All this to say, she knows what she's talking about.
Yes. 100%.
Just some fun things right off the top here. The Belasco is where Jane Mansfield starred in the stage version of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter?
I remember that.
Yes.
I knew when you said Belasco, I was like, we've talked about that.
I don't even remember mentioning that theater in that episode.
I think you might have.
Maybe. If you're a Patreon subscriber, then you will have heard about that in
Yeah.
our Jane Mansfield 3-part series.
Which is amazing. And I keep looking at the bars on the back of trucks and being like, Mansfield Bar.
I know, I think about it all the time, actually. Al Pacino made his Broadway debut here in a show called Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie?
Does it?
We'll never know because the show was a flop. It closed after just a month, but Pacino won a Tony Award
shit.
for his performance.
Well, hey, that's good. At least the acting was good.
Yeah. And did any of you all watch the Tonys last night? Because when this comes out, the Tonys just aired.
The Tonys will have come out.
Maybe we watched it, maybe we didn't. We're recording this before they happened, so who knows? The Tonys are named after actress Mary Antoinette Perry, Mary Perry, who happened to be one of David Belasco's leading ladies. Jennifer Holliday made her Broadway debut at the Belasco.
I feel like debut would be like a good term for somebody who it's like their first time, but they don't do good at it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that was a debut.
Sorry, your debut.
And she, of course, went on to Dreamgirls fame.
Yes.
Tim Curry made his Broadway debut here with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So the Rocky Horror Picture Show had already been on in London, and they brought that production over here. It only ran for a month in New York, and unfortunately, they had to really tear up the seating to turn it into a dinner theater. It took years and years to restore it. Like, they really fucked that theater up. Yep. Right now, the show Appropriate, starring Sarah Paulson, is playing there.
Oh, Sarah Paulson.
I really want to see it. What's wild is, as I was writing this episode, my friend Rodrigo from college, his husband posted a story that they were at the matinee. So I texted Rodrigo and I was like, hey, if you're still at the Belasco, can you get a picture of it for me? Because I could use it for my episode. And he did. So the one that I'm using for the show is going to be by one Mr. Rodrigo Cruz. Just shout him out.
Thanks, Rodrigo Cruz.
Thank you, Rodrigo. We're going to talk about the building itself, the guy it's named after, the ghosties that hang out there, and the people, including some celebrities, who swear up and down that they've seen the ghosts with their own eyeballs.
Eyeing them ghosts.
Eyeing them ghosts. So as I was saying, the Belasco Theater is named after theater impresario David Belasco. He was born on July 25th, 1853 in San Francisco. He started working in the theater when he was a kid, basically doing whatever small jobs needed to be done. He would make copies of scripts for the actors. He would be an extra in shows that just needed people to fill in the background. As he got a little older, he worked as a stagehand and then as a stage manager. And by the time he hit his 20s, he was performing, directing, producing, and went on to become a prolific playwright and pioneer in production design. He's kind of a big deal.
Oh my gosh.
And actually, I had never even heard of him before I started doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe we studied him briefly in college, but I don't remember it.
Yeah,
But he did a lot of shit.
Wow.
Also, wait, where's my phone? When he was younger, he looked just like Miles Teller. Because I was looking at his picture and I was like, who does he remind me of? That's like an actor that I've seen. I did a side-by-side for you.
Yay.
They're wearing the same expression, practically the same outfit. It's a little freaky, but here.
That's uncanny.
Isn't that wild?
That's insane.
Maybe I'll put it on our Instagram stories. It's not going to be on our main feed, but yeah, I couldn't stop looking at it. I was like, what?
Teller.
But any hoops, Belasco wrote more than 100 plays. Although from what I've read, it doesn't sound like his writing was like super great. But of everything he wrote, most notably, he was the first to adapt the short story Madame Butterfly for the stage.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the one title most people I think will have heard of.
Yeah.
He also wrote The Girl of the Golden West, which was his other most well-known work. And like Madame Butterfly, Puccini later turned it into an opera.
Great.
He's credited with inventing techniques that would influence modern stage lighting. He didn't like the way the footlights on the stage were visible to the audience because he felt like that took them out of the story that they were watching.
Oh, okay.
So he created a way to hide them under glass, which could be placed below floor level. It gave a more natural lighting effect.
Oh.
He also divided the footlights into sections so they could be independently controlled. He used colored lights to change up the mood and the setting, and often designed his lighting to complement the skin tone and hair color of his actors.
Yeah, he did.
We love to see it.
We love it.
He used an elaborate dimmer board. So in theater, the lighting cues are programmed into a dimmer board. Each dimmer will bring up a different light. His board had 65 dimmers, which for that time was really impressive. And it gave him countless possibilities of lighting effects because there were so many combinations of lights you could manipulate. Belasco was known for bringing naturalism to the stage, both in performances and stage design. In the show I mentioned earlier, The Girl of the Golden West, he designed the lighting to look like a sunset happening in real time. So the play opened with this 5-minute gorgeous sunset before any dialogue was spoken.
Wow.
He's even mentioned in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. There's a part where Fitzgerald writes about a drunk man who's in Gatsby's library and is amazed that the books are real. And the man says, quote, "It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fella's a regular Belasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness. What realism."
What realism.
And to really give audiences that immersive experience, he would pump different scents through the ventilation system of his theaters to help set the scene. Disneyland does the same thing. So maybe he would have a little lavender oil waft through if like a scene was set in a garden or is that kind of thing.
I love that.
His sets were highly detailed and stayed true to his desire for realism on the stage. One play was set in a restaurant, so he had a real kitchen built onto the stage where actors actually cooked real food throughout the show. And then for another play, he built a fully operational laundromat. So like actors are just doing laundry on stage.
Whoa.
For the turn of the century, this was all groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say, now you could just go and do it in those places and call it site specific.
Yeah, it's really immersive theater.
Kate's drinking her beer.
It tastes good. Sometimes.
What kind of beer is that?
It's a Modelo.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes just, I don't know, a beer sounds really
you know
good.
what gets me is a nice crispy Bud Light.
You know what? I'll do a Bud Light, but it's not my go-to.
It's my go-to.
Okay. One of the wildest things that Belasco did for a set that made me go, I don't know, David, that might be a little bit much. He wanted the set to look like a cheap, rundown New York boarding house, but said he just couldn't build one that looked, quote, shabby enough. So he went to the worst-looking boarding house he could find in the city, bought a room, like not rented a room, he bought the room, and then had his carpenters go and dismantle that room and rebuild it on the stage.
Okay.
I feel like you could have just taken a photo.
Thanks.
And
and also for taking away a space from somebody who probably really needed it.
I don't think it was being used very much.
Sure.
Because of his innovations in stage design and lighting, Belasco was nicknamed the Wizard of the Great White Way.
Huh.
Another nickname he was known as was the Bishop of Broadway, because he insisted on dressing as a priest at all times. He even wore a clerical collar. He was not a priest. He wasn't even Catholic. He was raised Jewish. But he definitely was eccentric.
I'm going to start wearing my nun costume
just
every day.
You keep teasing that.
I do keep teasing that, and I'm going to take a page from old
Belasco.
Old Belasco's book and just dress who I feel.
Go for it.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. He also had a bad temper and would fly into a rage seemingly out of nowhere, but his tantrums were usually premeditated. For example, when he would start working with a new cast on a show, he would make a point to take out his pocket watch and go on and on about how much this pocket watch meant to him, that it was a family heirloom, something he treasured. But then just before the play opened, he would throw this violent tantrum and lash out at one of his actors, usually a young female, to try and scare his cast, kind of like, you better do a good job or else. And then for added effect, he would take out his prized pocket watch and stomp on it till it was in pieces. This supposedly inspired amazing performances opening night. And he would do this over and over. He kept a trunk full of cheap pocket watches for this very purpose. It's like that episode of Friends when Monica keeps getting disrespected at the restaurant, so she hires Joey as a waiter just so she can fire him in front of everyone so that her employees will start showing her respect. Do you know what episode I'm talking about? Did you watch Friends? Okay, Kevin just shook his head no to both questions.
Okay. Unpopular opinion. I really don't like Friends.
You can go.
I'm so sorry. I don't usually tell that to people, but it's not a show for me. I know nothing about it. It was a huge cultural phenomenon show. I know who was in it. I know what it's about. I just could never get into it.
Okay.
Kate looks pissed.
We're just going to move on. As though...
she clicks my track off and she's like, Kevin had to leave.
Weird. Like, his side didn't record.
Oh, no.
When a pocket watch just wouldn't do, Belasco resorted to throwing a real axe at his own scenery on stage.
Okay.
But this, too, was also pre-planned because just hours before the axe throwing, Belasco switched out the scenery. Like, that's really going the extra mile with your rage, that you order 2 sets just so you can destroy one with an axe to scare your cast. So that's who we're talking about here.
Okay. That's a little much.
He's a bit much in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
All of New York City was aware of Belasco's temper, but even so, people were clamoring to work with him because he was really talented and he could launch careers.
Oh.
He gave Helen Hayes her stage debut when she was just 5 years old. She went on to be known as the First Lady of American Theater and was the first female EGOT winner. For those who don't know, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. Mm-hmm. Just to be clear. He convinced a young actress named... Actress? What is that?
Actress.
He convinced a young actress named Gladys Smith to change her name to Mary Pickford.
Whoa.
Mary appeared in his plays at the first Belasco Theater in New York, and they acted together in the movie A Good Little Devil, which was based on the play written by Belasco. More than 40 of his plays were turned into films.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's interesting because from what I've read, like, his plays were kind of forgettable.
Well, I was going to say, like, he wrote all these things, but only, like, a handful of them became super famous.
Yeah. And that's, like, a small handful.
A small handful.
A very tiny hand.
Like a couple.
That's a tiny hand. Belasco also helped further the career of a young woman named Ruby Stevens and convinced her to change her name to Barbara Stanwyck.
Wow.
When famed director Cecil B. DeMille was fresh out of school and just getting started in his career, he sought Belasco's guidance.
Wow.
It helped that DeMille's father, Henry Churchill DeMille.
Say that 3 times fast.
Damn. Was good friends with Belasco.
Okay.
It was considered a huge honor to get to work with Belasco.
Wow.
And to be able to call yourself a Belasco actor, you were hot shit. There were multiple Belasco theaters in the U.S. The first one in New York began as the Theater Republic on 42nd Street, which, fun fact, was constructed by Oscar Hammerstein I, the grandfather of the lyricist Oscar Hammerstein. In 1902, 2 years after the Theater Republic opened, Belasco took over management and remodeled it and was like, I think I'll just have everyone call this the Belasco from now on. So that was the first one.
Okay.
2 Belasco theaters opened in Los Angeles, one in 1904 and another several years later in 1926. Each was operated by one of David's brothers.
Okay.
The first by Frederick, the second by Edward. So it was a big old family business.
Fred, Ed, and...
David. I tried to do something. Ew, David. And then there was the Schubert Belasco Theater in Washington, D.C., which David purchased in 1905. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a little bit more beer.
Oh. Drinking in the closet. Recording episodes. Talking about the theater. Talking about those hoes. I apologize. I keep going like this with my nose. I got like it. You know when you get an itch right on the nostril?
Sorry, my niece just sent me pictures from a beach, and she lives in Kentucky, so I don't know where the fuck
where
she is. I don't know. I'll need to text her back.
Angie, where is your family?
Where are your children? Do you even know? All right. It's David's second New York theater, originally called the Stuyvesant, that we're going to focus on today.
Stuyvesant.
It was named after some Dutch governor that Belasco was into.
Oh, we know all about those Dutch in the northeast. Go to our Patreon episode about Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, I was like, where are we going with this? Okay.
Because they came over and we're like, we're taking everything.
We're taking it.
We're all Dutch. And we're settling.
But it wasn't a Dutch guy that did. It was David who named it after because he liked this governor.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah. This theater began construction in 1906. And when the first cornerstone was laid, Frances Starr, who was an actress that worked for several years with Belasco and his theater company, placed a time capsule underneath that cornerstone It was a copper box that contained several items pertaining to Belasco and his theater company's programs from shows, photos of all the stars that were working with him at the time, good luck charms from friends and employees. And according to Tepper's book that I mentioned earlier, that time capsule is still there. And her book was published in 2016, so assuming the box hasn't been dug up since then, it's been buried under there for 118 years.
It's still there?
Did you hear my last paragraph?
Yeah. No, but like really, like have they done any kind of ground thing around it? Or did you already say that and I missed what you just said?
Wow.
Say it again.
It's still there.
Okay. Also, before you start again, love a time capsule.
Who doesn't?
Love a time capsule.
Let's do our own time capsule.
Oh my God, Kate, yes.
Yes.
Let's. There's one in Ohio, because there's a lot of mounds in Ohio, like Native American burial mounds. There's one in the cemetery in Marietta, Ohio, and at the top of it, you can walk up the steps to the very top of the mound, and there's a time capsule there from like the early 1900s.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I wonder what's inside there.
I don't know.
So this theater, which at first David named the Stuyvesant, as I said before, was built to his unique specifications.
Oh, God.
Obviously, unparalleled stage lighting. But he also commissioned his good friend Louis Comfort Tiffany, the creator of Tiffany lamps, to create custom fixtures and stained glasswork for the theater.
Ooh.
Several sources say that it was Charles Louis Tiffany who created the designs, but he was already dead by the time work began on this theater.
So no.
I don't think it was him. I think the mistake comes from the fact that Charles Tiffany was the father of Louis Tiffany, lamp guy.
I see.
Charles Tiffany was no schlub, though. He was the founder of the store Tiffany's. So he did big things in life. He just didn't make these lamps.
Is Tiffany's the one that has that very distinct blue bag?
Yes, the Tiffany blue.
Tiffany blue.
Center stage of this theater was a platform that was actually a large elevator used to quickly change out scenery. There were 2 floors below the stage floor that the elevator could reach. So, like, you just move a set onto this platform and hit a button, and then boom shakalaka.
It's so insane how that works. To tell a little anecdote, I almost had a job at a Broadway theater in New York once. When I was moving back from London, I was like trying to figure out where to go.
Yeah.
And the company I worked for in the UK had acquired a Broadway theater. And it was where Spider-Man was playing at the time. And so I went over there and met with the manager and like got a tour of the entire theater and got to like go under the stage to see where all the giant set pieces would like lift up. It was very cool.
And at the time, like 1906, 1907, by the time the theater opened, this was a huge deal. Like, this was not seen before. Well, it was seen at his first New York theater, but like Belasco was the one like really bringing this up. Belasco wanted audiences in his new theater to feel like they were sitting in someone's living room, like they were a part of the action. So he designed it to be fairly shadow. Kevin, what's happening? It's because we're doing 2 episodes at once.
We all... Shallow, is that the word you were looking for?
It sure is.
Okay.
He designed it to be fairly shallow. There are 2 balconies, or like a mezzanine and then the top balcony.
Okay.
And the front of that lower balcony is pretty close to the front of the stage.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
okay.
It's very like...
It's very up there.
Yeah, very up there. He didn't want people to have to use opera glasses to see what was going on. He wanted you to like be right there in the action.
Be right by it. I like that.
Yeah. He had a hydraulic system that allowed for the drops and the curtain to all be raised and lowered via electric motors. Again, it's 1907.
What the fuck? This guy is like elevators, hydraulics, new lighting stages.
He's so smart. He's an inventor. This was also the most fire safety conscious theater of the time. We're just a few years after the tragic fire of the Iroquois Theater in 1903 here in Chicago, where more than 600 people died. So the way David designed the building of this new theater, there was a large number of exits he had. So I think it was he had enough exits so that if you were sitting in the orchestra, between 16 and 20 people each had their own exit. And then in the balconies, that ratio was even smaller, like, you know, a few people got this exit. So if there were a fire, it was said that the entire place of like 1,100 audience members potentially could be out safely within 3 minutes. So this was huge.
That's amazing.
He also put the dressing rooms away from the theater, separated by a fireproof wall. And I think that was a mandatory thing with theaters after the fire at Iroquois, that the dressing rooms had to be separated. He really put a lot of thought into safety. In 1910, David gave up that first theater, the one he had taken over in 1902 and then renamed after himself. He left that and renamed the Stuyvesant the Belasco, and it is still known as the Belasco today. Above the theater sits a somewhat hidden 10-room duplex apartment.
Really?
This was David Belasco's bachelor pad.
Oh, shit. He lived above the theater like the Phantom of the Opera.
He was not a bachelor. He was actually married to a woman named Cecilia Loveridge for more than 50 years, and they had 2 daughters together. But that didn't stop old David from having numerous affairs. He was a notorious womanizer known for seducing his leading ladies and the women in the chorus. So
when
all
you said
of them.
Womanizer, I was like, boy, don't try to front.
No, just what you are. Brittany, if you're there, call us. His apartment featured an elevator that ran from the apartment to the backstage of the theater, and this is what women would use to go from the theater up to his place. A little scandaloso. The bedroom of the apartment had a balcony that overlooked a dance floor, and he would host parties up there. The dance floor is in his apartment. This place is huge. And he would host parties up there, and as guests were partying on the dance floor below, he would look down from his balcony and choose which woman he wanted to stay with him that evening.
Okay.
The bedroom was decorated with Japanese paneling, and he would slide the panels back to reveal pornography that covered the walls.
Delicious.
He really went all out.
Amazing.
He supposedly even had a confessional booth in the apartment.
Ew.
And a game frequently played was he'd ask the woman he was spending the evening with to confess her sins. Remember, he's dressed as a priest.
I forgot he always dressed it like a priest.
Yeah. And for each sin that she confessed, he would have her take off a piece of clothing. This was his little game. In addition to the porn and the dance floor and the confessional where women are just stripping naked after they confess their sins, the apartment had 30-foot high ceilings, a library, a steam room, and a grotto with a waterfall.
Oh my God. This is like the theater version of Hugh Hefner.
Long before Hefner was even
born. I imagine like being in that confessional booth and just being like, I called my mom a bitch once.
Well, take off your shirt.
Oh.
He also had priest holes built into the walls.
What is that?
So I had never heard of this before, but apparently it's what Catholic clergy used to hide from an attack. Belasco claimed he needed these priest holes for his protection. Protection from what? I'm not sure. There was also a peephole that he would look through and spy on the theater downstairs. So he could like watch the shows from his apartment.
He's 100% Phantom of the Opera-ing up there.
He really is. Belasco would use the apartment as an office as well as living quarters, and the sign on one of the office doors read American Model Agency. I tried to research that, and it doesn't seem like that modeling agency was a real thing.
Ew. Is this his version of a casting couch?
I think he maybe pretended to be a modeling scout from time to time.
This is kind of dark. Like dressing up as a priest and doing all this weird sex stuff above your theater.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
Is it still there? Is that apartment still up there?
It is. I mean, it's abandoned. Obviously.
Oh, it's abandoned?
Yeah, nothing ever went into it after his death.
Oh. I gotta get up there.
Yeah, you do.
Sarah Paulson, give me a call.
Sarah, and also tickets to your show, but also can we get up to that apartment?
Sarah, please take me to the dance floor.
Take me to the dance floor. I mentioned he was an eccentric character, and that was definitely apparent in the items found in the apartment. These included a chair that once belonged to Napoleon, as well as a lock of Napoleon's hair, a pew from the church Shakespeare attended in Stratford-upon-Avon.
I thought you were going to be like, and a pube from Napoleon. I was like, ew, he had Napoleon's pubes?
Well, we don't know where that lock of hair was from. So, Could be. There was also a fireplace containing 73 tiles that, according to several sources I read, had been stolen from the Alhambra Palace in Spain.
Oh my God, we're talking fireplaces. I'm remembering back to
the Batchelder tiles.
The Batchelder tiles. I've never been so happy.
What was the
It was the murder house from
American Horror
Story.
Story. But there was a name for it and I can't think of it right now.
The whole name for the
it started with an R.
Oh.
Shoot.
It's okay. It's on Patreon.
It is okay. After Belasco's death in 1931, his apartment was taken apart and auctioned off. And then, like I said, just sat abandoned.
And it's just still sitting there abandoned. Oh my God. You could, New York real estate, selling that apartment. We're talking money. We're talking time.
Well, it's owned by the Schubert organization now, who owns the theater.
Right.
And over the years, they were going to try to renovate it and like do something with it. But then all the money that they allocated towards that apartment ended up going just into the theater because the theater needed a lot of work. At one point, they put in a bunch of like air conditioning ducts and stuff up there, but that kind of like ruined it a little bit because like so nothing's there. Some cast members will like sneak up there, and there have been a couple of groups that have been able to go up there and check things out because there's still like there's like a safe that has his name engraved into it, like so you can still see things there.
Fast. I love abandoned places.
I think it would be really cool. I will say, so I told my friend Rodrigo, I was like, when you get that picture, I said, if you can get
up to the
like if you can get a picture with the apartment in it, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew what I was talking about because that picture does not have the apartment.
Yeah.
But it's okay, Rodrigo. So Belasco had a huge book collection that was given to the New York Public Library after his death. And in 1955, the Schubert organization, which had acquired the Belasco, as I was saying, donated some remaining items to Sardi's restaurant, which is like right there. That's the restaurant that has all the caricatures of famous people on the walls.
Yes. Okay.
So they took some bookcases, gargoyles that had hung on the walls, and the railing of the balcony, which they turned into a bar. And they have a Belasco room in that restaurant, which I think now is mainly used for offices. At his funeral, among his 10 pallbearers were songwriter George Cohen. He wrote, "Over there, send the word, send the word."
I know that song.
Oh, okay. You looked at me like I was on crack. Okay.
No, I know that song.
He also wrote "Give My Regards to Broadway." So he was there as a pallbearer. Lee Schubert, co-founder of the Schubert organization, and the mayor of New York City, James Walker, was also a pallbearer. Wow. But even after he died, Belasco didn't seem to want to leave his precious theater.
Kate, you better tell me there's a priest ghost
he be haunting that
flying
place.
Around.
He be haunting. The Belasco is considered the most haunted theater in New York City, claiming more ghost sightings than any other Broadway theater.
You bet.
And when you think about how pretty much all theaters are haunted, that's saying a lot. Back in the 90s, actor Fritz Weaver was doing a production of The Crucible by Arthur Miller.
Oh, I love that show.
Miller was present at all of the rehearsals. And at one point in the play, Fritz looks out into the audience and says the line, "They're out there." And one day after rehearsal, Miller went up to him and said, "The look in your eyes when you said that line really told me that you saw witches out there." And Fritz said that when he had looked out into the audience to say that line, he swore he saw Belasco's ghost. Many people have sworn they've seen Belasco's ghost sitting in the audience. And remember how I said that Belasco had a peephole in his apartment where he could watch what was happening on stage? Fritz said that during performances, every now and then, he'd see the light go on through that peephole and believed it was Belasco watching the show.
Ew.
A light that just comes on in this abandoned apartment.
I'm obsessed.
It's crazy.
Obsessed.
In 2010, during the show Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, the head of the props department, a woman named Laura, would set everything back in place at the end of the night. She made sure everything was in the correct spot. But then the next day, when she came into work, some of the props would be moved, not where she left them. It happened every single day.
Spooky.
Finally, one day she'd had enough. She was tired of hunting down props, placing them back where they should be, and she said, "David Belasco, we need to have a talk about this because I know that you love actors more than anything, and when you do that, you put me and my actors in danger." From that day onward, nothing was ever out of place for the rest of that production. Several cast and crew members of various shows have reported seeing Belasco's ghost in the audience, as I said. Back in 2001, actress Kelly O'Hara was doing a production of Follies, and during a tech rehearsal, her castmate, Roxanne Barlow, just started screaming. And everyone's like, are you okay? And Roxanne said she saw a man in a robe, like a priest's robe, not a bathrobe, who was sitting in the balcony facing sideways, not watching the stage, but just kind of staring off. So the cast and crew all ran up to the balcony to see if they could find this guy. No one's there. For several years, decades really, shows at the Belasco were few and far between because the theater was really run down, so it just wasn't used much. I mean, it's been renovated since, but there was a pretty long span of time where it was rough.
In disrepair.
Yes. So if a special event wanted to use the space, it was pretty easy to rent because there was rarely anything playing there. So in 1991, Tony Randall and Jack Klugman were to star in a one-night-only benefit performance of The Odd Couple. The theater was in bad shape. It was covered in dust, it was dark, it hadn't been used in a long time, but it was still ornate. It still had the Tiffany glass, and it also had these big murals. And in one of the murals, Belasco is in the scene dressed as a pope. Remember, he's the one like asking for these paintings. Right. And another mural depicts the beheading of a knight. The knight resembled theater critic George Nathan, who had criticized Belasco's plays as hokum. And the one doing the beheading was Belasco. He a petty bitch.
He's a petty little...
He commissioned a whole-ass mural just to portray him killing someone who didn't like his plays.
He's so dramatic.
He really is.
And eccentric.
So lighting designer Jason Kantrowitz decided he wanted to showcase this decor for the audience, for The Odd Couple. He began working on lighting specific areas of the house. The house is where the audience sits, just in case you weren't aware. And so as he's doing this, he's focusing lights into the dark corners and nooks to brighten the place up a bit. And the porter walks by. The porter is basically the maintenance person in charge of the upkeep, taking out the trash, changing light bulbs. Not dusting, apparently, because this place was filthy. But this guy had worked at the theater for years and years. And the porter says to Jason, he's not going to like this.
Ooh.
And Jason asks, who? And the porter said, Mr. Belasco, you're letting him out. Is that not
That's
the
terrifying.
creepiest?
Ew,
so
that gave me
scary.
chills.
Yeah. Jason was like, whatever. But the day of the show, like a few hours before the audience came in, Jason was focusing a light on one of the murals and the power went out. Not all the power, like the sound system still worked, the work lights were still on, but all of Jason's theatrical lighting, gone.
Shit.
He thought it was the porter playing a prank on him to prove his point. Like, see ya. See ya? Like, see, told ya.
See ya. As the porter, like, waves and dances out of the theater.
They had to call the electric company. They came out, inspected the inside of the theater, couldn't find anything wrong. By this time, people are starting to line up outside to see the show.
Oh, shit.
The electric company had to make all those people move so that they could dig into the street in front of the theater. And they located the electrical vault underground and found in the electrical box what appeared to be a fire that had burned the wiring.
Whoa.
They managed to have it fixed half an hour before the show started, just in time for the audience to come in.
That's insane. Also weird that, like, they had to dig underneath the ground to find that place.
Yeah, I don't...
Like, I feel like it should be accessible from somewhere.
Well, one story that I don't know if it's in here, but that electric company refused to go into the basement of the theater because they felt it was too haunted.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
So maybe that's why. Maybe they
Great.
were just scared. This story is crazy. So in 1980, actress Elizabeth Ashley was in a play called Hide and Seek. And there's a moment in the play where her character, who's a pregnant woman, starts to lose her mind and thinks that she's a 4-year-old. During the second show of a 2-show day, Elizabeth was exhausted, she felt kind of drained, and she actually blacked out on stage. And when she came to, she started to panic because she didn't know where she was.
Ooh, that's scary.
So she runs off stage and the stage manager goes, oh my God, that was amazing. I didn't know you were going to start speaking in tongues. And she was like, huh? She had no idea that she was speaking in tongues, no idea what was going on. And all the stagehands said, it's Belasco.
What the fuck?
This guy.
That's insane.
Over the years, several people have claimed they've seen a man in a dark suit sitting in the balcony, but when they try to get closer, he's not there. Or they say lights will flicker on and off for no reason. And many have said that they hear footsteps in the theater offices when no one is there. The box office manager will come in early before everyone else to open up the box office, and they'll hear someone walking around, but there's no one. And Belasco isn't the only ghost that's said to haunt that theater. The other is a blonde woman wearing a blue dress. She is said to have been a chorus girl in one of David Belasco's shows and was one of his many lovers at one point. Yeah. She died from a fall from Belasco's apartment. There are 3 different stories as to what caused her to fall, and it's like that show Accident, Suicide, or Murder. The first story is that she accidentally fell down the elevator shaft from Belasco's apartment. The second is that she killed herself by jumping out of one of his apartment windows. And the third is that she was pushed down the elevator shaft.
Oh, so 2 involve the elevator shaft. 1 involves jumping out a window. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whichever, if any of those stories is true, her ghost seems to make an appearance even more than Belasco's.
Wow.
In 1998, actress Laura Linney was performing in the show Honor, and people had told her the theater was haunted, but she didn't really think much about it.
Okay.
Then during the final dress rehearsal, Laura was doing her monologue, and there's a point in it where she looks up in the balcony and then back to her scene partner. But that night, she said, and this is a quote, "I looked to the balcony, and standing at the railing, there was a woman in a robin's egg blue satin dress with crimped blonde hair. She was standing very still and looking at the theater. I looked right at her and thought, well, hello. She didn't scare me." The thing was, in 1998, the balcony was only accessible from the outside, and all those doors were locked. And when Laura looked at the balcony again, the woman was gone. She didn't tell anyone about it at first, but one day she was talking with the house manager, and this was after the show was well into its run. And the house manager told her that there were all sorts of stories about the theater being haunted, like the one where the electric company wouldn't go down to the basement, that sort of thing. And that's when Laura mentioned she thought maybe she'd seen a ghost during that final dress rehearsal. And the house manager goes, "Male or female?" And she said, "Female." And he goes, "Blue dress, blonde hair?"
Ooh.
The ghosties like the dress rehearsals because when those lights went out for the Odd Couple, it was a dress rehearsal.
Wow.
Patti LuPone was doing a show there in 2010, and several of the cast members claimed to see the lady in blue along with glowing orbs. And Patti said there was one time when she thought she saw something. Maybe it was just her imagination. She seemed a little bit more freaked out about it. In 2004, during Dracula, actress Melissa Errico came out of the bathroom, and at the end of the hallway was a giant mirror. And there was a woman walking ahead of her. And Melissa saw this woman, walk right through that mirror.
Ooh, spooky. I almost said skooky.
According to legend, if a production puts one of its actresses in a robin's egg blue dress, the ghost of the blue lady will leave that show alone. And then this isn't a ghost story. It's just something interesting.
I love it. Tell us all.
In 2009, after Barack Obama won the presidential election, he took Michelle to the Belasco to see August Wilson's play, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. And it was kind of a historical moment because it was a show by a Black playwright that was the first Broadway show our first Black president saw while in office. And at that time, the Belasco still had a separate entrance to the balcony. This was from the days of segregation, when Black people were expected to sit in the balcony. After the run of the play, the separate entrance for the balcony of the Belasco was permanently closed. I'm interested if any of you have been to the Belasco.
That's insane. That's amazing and spooky and scary.
It's fun. I want to go. Now I really wish that I had seen Appropriate while we were there. We talked about it, but we had shows booked every day, so that just wasn't one of them. I asked Rodrigo, I was like, when you saw Appropriate, were any of the actresses wearing a blue dress? And he said, I don't remember. I don't think so. But he said he didn't think so. I was like, well, I wonder if there's any ghost stories in. Let us know your ghost stories or any like haunted theater experiences you have. You can put them in comments on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at
Horrorwood Podcast.
You can send us an email at
horrorwoodpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you have like all this extra change that's just loading you down, you can give it to us over at Patreon at
patreon.com/horrorwoodpodcast.
That's it. Happy 100th episode, Horrorwood.
100!
Woo, woo, woo.
Ah.